You can see he's actually coming towards me, which is more than I normally get problem-wise from him. Whoop, don't go under my computer, boy. And whoop, coming towards me again. Elle stares out of the way for a moment here. Hey, what's happening, herpers? So I'm back with this week's video to do a little bit of habitat maintenance for Spot, my western diamondback rattlesnake, and I'm also going to be going over the patron chosen topic for today's video, which is what's better for venomous snake handling, hooks or tongs, and why I use what I use when I use it. So in this video I'm going to be going over the pros and cons of using hooks and tongs in my opinion, and that's what today's video is going to be, largely my opinion on how to properly use hooks and tongs, but that opinion comes from years and years of working with all sorts of venomous snakes. And as you can see here, I've got a bit of a mess to clean up in Spot's enclosure. He pooped in there. His water dish is a little low, so I'm going to go ahead and pull the water dish out and scrub that out and get him some fresh water. And then once his habitat is all squared away, I'll get him back into the habitat. And I'll try to do my best to explain everything that I'm doing while I'm doing it and why I'm doing it that way. But that being said, I'm not making today's video so you go out and try this with a venomous snake. I don't recommend anybody keep venomous snakes as pets. I have my venomous snakes because they were animals that were not able to go back into the wild, and I'm committed to giving them a home for the rest of their natural lives. So with that disclaimer and acknowledgement that this video is just for entertainment purposes out of the way, I'm going to go ahead and get started with cleaning Spot's habitat. But first, I have the reveal from last week's video. Right here is how the UFO hide came out. I'll try to get a little closer to the camera here for you. So I'm really happy with how this came out. This is Jupiter, my leopard gecko's newest hide, and last week's video was showing how I make DIY rocks and hides for my... Ooh, you can kind of even see the stars getting picked up on that. Distracted there. But last week's video was all about how I make DIY rocks and reptile hides for my reptiles. The one thing I need to work on with this is maybe a little Velcro on the top, but if I just am careful when I set it down, maybe. The top does eventually sit all right. That's kind of the one big flaw with this from my perspective, but it's sturdy enough. I'm not afraid of putting it in with my leopard gecko. So I'm going to go ahead and put Jupiter's new UFO into her enclosure, and throughout the rattlesnake habitat maintenance today, I'll just keep peeking back over there, and I'll try to show you guys what her response to it is when she eventually comes out to investigate. So you can see I kind of played with the layout of Jupiter's enclosure a little bit. We've got her, I don't know if you can see her yet, open this up. We've got Jupiter hanging out on those back rocks, and I made space for her new UFO to go right over here, and I just realized I don't have her lights on yet. There we go. So there is the base to Jupiter's hide. She's over there. Oh hey, you're gonna come out and see how the hide is? So as you can see, it fits right in there, and then the top part just sets right in on top because it's a little iffy to get seated just right at the moment. I've kind of got this centered between the side glass and the tree just as a temporary thing, but as you can see, if she climbs up here, she's so light that it's not going to cause this to fall or anything like that. But that's the type of stuff you always want to be cautious about. Jada's barking to drive home the emphasis on that. Thank you, Jada. But there you have it. Jupiter's new hide, complete and in her enclosure. Let me know in the comments what you think of it. Sorry that it had to wait until this week and that there was such a delay on the DIY rock video. But I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, leave a comment down below to let me know, and I will make more how-to videos like that in the future. Speaking of those DIY rocks, there's Bojangles enjoying his. And I don't think I will have it posted by the time this video goes live, but I just filmed a YouTube short with Lucy striking her meal coming out from under the fake rock that I made for her last week. So needless to say, all my reptiles have been enjoying their new hides so far, and I can't wait to see what Jupiter's response is. So there you have Jupiter, my leopard gecko's newest rock hide. Again, if you want to see how I made that or how you can make your own designs, check out the video I posted last week where I take you through the whole process. But now it's time to get into today's patron chosen topic, which is the controversy of what's better for venomous snake handling, hooks or tongs. So almost as soon as I posted hooks versus tongs as a potential video topic, somebody popped into the comments with what is essentially my thesis for this problem, and that is tongs are used for field work situations where if the snake gets away, it's going to disappear into a hole or get into something where you are not going to be able to get it back, and you just cannot afford to have those extra couple seconds that being able to kind of forcefully and brutally grab a snake and yank it out of where it's going. Another strong point for tongs is that tongs are great for working with things inside of the enclosure. If I need to move Spot's skull from one side of his enclosure to another, if Bojangles somehow spills his water dish, I can just pull out his water dish and not worry about pulling out the whole snake. And that, in my opinion, is where tongs really shine, is I don't need to worry about hurting this hook when I pick it up with tongs. I don't need to worry about hurting the fake cage. We're all good. I don't need to worry about hurting the fake cage decor in the enclosures if I don't grab it right. So for doing some tidying and what I kind of jokingly call like the building a ship in a bottle process of venomous snake keeping, where you're doing things at a distance, for those cases tongs are great. They can keep you from having to pull the whole animal out, and in those instances tongs are good for managing the stress of the reptile as well as managing the amount of risk that we take on as venomous keepers anytime that we go into a reptile enclosure. Now, there are going to be people that are already madly typing in the comments that I've already messed up. They have the rule of thumb that you never do anything in an enclosure that still has the venomous snake in it, and to them I say, you're right. If that is a safety rule for you, and that is something that has worked for you and has kept you safe, and that's one of the rules you rely on to stay safe, then you're probably right, and you probably shouldn't try doing something new and doing what some idiot on the internet tells you. But for me, as a venomous snake handler, there are times where it is safer for me not to pull the snake out. Maybe the snake doesn't want to come out today. Maybe the snake is just in a really easy place where I can reach past it with the tongs and grab its poop out of there, or do the adjustments or straightening in the habitat that I need to do without disturbing the snake. And in my opinion, I'm going to always try to do what minimizes stress for the animal and keeps me the safest. But that being said, I know the camp of people are out there that believe you should never do anything in a venomous enclosure while that venomous animal is still in there, and I understand and respect that opinion. It's just not mine. Now I'm talking about the weaknesses of tongs. You probably already know where I'm going with this based on the strengths of the tong that I kept hammering home, that they're great for moving things around the enclosure, more so things that you don't need to worry about hurting, like your animal's poop or their cage decorations. What tongs really aren't great for is kind of what they're made for, and that's handling snakes. Now again, there is a time and place for a tong. If you have a rattlesnake in your garage, if you have a black mamba in a tree by your home and you're out where they live, maybe you aren't going to want to mess around with a hook that gives you less control of the animal. Maybe you are a homeowner who doesn't keep venomous snakes, has never signed up for any of this, and you just want to get the snake off of your property safely without risking your safety or hurting the snake. In that case, yeah, tongs are a great tool for the untrained snake keeper. When I first started keeping venomous snakes, I had almost zero training, and tongs were a vital part of my learning process. But aside from those emergency situations, and maybe being a tool for more untrained handlers who aren't sure how to handle a venomous snake correctly, tongs really fall short when it comes to safely handling venomous snakes. And that mainly comes down to a few things. One of the big problems with tongs is you are physically restraining the animal. And what does that look like? Well, kind of teeth. That is what happens when an animal is attacked. Something comes, wraps around it, and pinches it. And so for a lot of snakes, the tongs are going to instantly trigger a bit of a fight or flight response. Now you can minimize that by, depending where you grab the snake. Some places are going to make the snake more nervous than others. Up by the head, it's going to really freak them out. Down by the tail, it's going to give them a lot of room to go swinging around and really freak you out. But again, if you have to move a venomous snake, maybe out of your garage, out of your backyard, away from kids, and you're somebody who doesn't have a lot of venomous snake handling experience, tongs can be a fantastic tool. And the one PSA I'll add to this, if you do decide to get a pair of tongs for dealing with venomous snakes around your home or anything like that, please be careful that you get good tongs. These are from a company called Midwest Tongs. You can get them from tongs.com or midwesttongs.com. At least that used to be their site. And this is one of the more aggressive grab ones. It's got a narrow grip. They've got an even wider spoon grip, and that's because even the maker of these tongs knows that this can be a little aggressive and cause a lot of snakes to panic. So the spoon grip ones are a little bit safer for the animals. It spreads out the force you're applying to them, so it doesn't put it on such a thin area and makes it a little less likely that you may accidentally end up breaking some ribs with these. But Midwest Tongs is probably the best out there that I'm aware of. If you know of other good tong brands, let me know down in the comments. I'll try to pin any of those good suggestions that I see. And now that I've given you a recommendation for a good type of tong to get if you are looking for tongs for venomous snake handling or just moving snakes away from your home, I have to mention the ones you want to avoid. I'm not going to say any name brands or store names or place names, but there's a certain type of tong out there that has a very aggressively serrated edge. It's even thinner than this thin grabby part of the metal here, and those are very cheaply made. You can look up the price for them on Alibaba. It is cents, or at least it used to be cents, $1 or $2. You're being charged hundreds of times more than what it costs to make them, and stand a decent chance of injuring any snakes that you try to move with them. So now that I have addressed the things about tongs that I like, and I've talked about the things I like using tongs for, and am okay with seeing other people use tongs for, I'm going to talk about why you don't see me use them very often. So if you've been following my channel for any amount of time, chances are you've been seeing me use this hook for my venomous snake handling, and that is because it is a much more controlled way to work with the venomous snake. And you might be thinking, what do you mean controlled? The clamp actually clamps onto them, the snake just sits on this. And that's where to use a hook effectively, you really need to have an understanding of how snakes move and how to handle venomous snakes. It's not as much of a turnkey tool as the tongs, where pretty much anybody can learn how to use a pair of tongs with about 30 minutes of instruction. If that. This takes a little bit of time and practice, but what you get for that time and practice is you never have to quickly go around a snake and pinch down on it like you do with the tongs. With this, if you have followed my shorts for a while, you've seen videos where I will open the enclosure door with the hook at a safe distance, and I will actually pet my rattlesnake with the hook. And that seems crazy, but what it's doing is it's letting the snake know, all right, this thing's not touching me, it's not biting me, it's not stinging me, and probably isn't an immediate threat. And that instantly switches the reptile's brain from, I need to either fight or flight and get away from these tongs, to, I don't like this thing, I'm going to kind of just try to slowly get away from it. Which obviously is lower stress for the reptile, you're not triggering their fight or flight response. But it's also safer for us as handlers, because now we don't have a snake flailing around that thinks it's fighting for its life. We have a snake that's oftentimes mildly annoyed that it's being bothered. But with years of experience and understanding of venomous snake body language, or just snake body language in general, and how snakes move, hooks are able to be a much more precise tool for captive collections. So where I might use the tongs for different cage decor elements inside the enclosure, for picking up poop, for picking things up, I'm really going to try my best to never pick up my snake with tongs unless it's an emergency, because the tongs just elevate the risk of injury. And that's what I was getting into earlier, where I understand tongs very much. If you are a homeowner who gets 1 or 2 snakes at your house every few years and you want a way to safely relocate that snake, move it to the other side of the property fence, and have a way to coexist with those animals without devoting hours and hours to learning how to use a hook safely, that makes sense. Now, if you have a captive collection, you either keep venomous privately, you work for a facility that keeps venomous. In those cases, a hook really should be the goal, because those animals are getting interacted with every couple days. And if you are stressing them out with something that has to physically grab and restrain them every few days, you're going to have much more stressed animals than if you're just lightly manipulating them with a hook and using the tongs to do other habitat maintenance at a distance. And every time you grab them, you're going to have to play the game of, am I squeezing tight enough to restrain them? You have to squeeze them now, because they are afraid. They aren't going to just sit and hold still, because there's a mutual respect and understanding that the hook's not going to hurt them. They are being grabbed, and they are going to try to defend themselves a lot of the time, or try to get away. So every time you grab them with the tongs, you have to play the game of apply more pressure, apply more pressure, apply more pressure until they stop moving, and you're restraining them enough that they aren't going anywhere, but you haven't restrained them so much that you're starting to break ribs and risk hurting the animal, especially if they randomly freak out, decide they can't move anymore, and just flail. That is a very easy way for snakes to end up with spinal injuries, and is why if a snake is in captivity and it's not just a one-time relocation, hooks really should be the standard, because with tongs it's just a matter of time until you hurt the snake or yourself. Alright, so with that kind of brief explanation out of the way, if you're like me, I'm not good at getting things fully just by listening to them. I kind of need to see things. So I'm going to go ahead and clean Spot's enclosure how I normally would, but I'm going to explain why I'm using tongs when I'm using tongs, and why I'm using the hook when I eventually bust out that hook. So as you can see, Spot, my western diamondback rattlesnake, has pooped kind of right next to his door. And I mentioned that normally I would like to pick up poop with tongs. That's one of the times I like to use tongs. There's a good chance Spot here would let me slide open this door, move my hand back just in case he strikes, and reach in with a pair of tongs and grab that out without bothering him at all. I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to get to that poop because of the angle of the lip of the enclosure, but I think if I come from back here, you can see that I'm kind of around the corner from Spot, so I've got some protection, and I should have a straight shot to pick up his poop without bothering him at all. You can see just his tongue flicking out from around that corner. Does that sound like a plan to you, buddy? All right, so let's give it a shot here. All right, there's Senor Spot. I'm just gonna come from the side here. You can hear a little rattling, and I'm going to try to just pick that up as one poop puck. I think he did it last night, so it's had a little time to dry out. Gross. And now, one of the things that I forgot to mention I do use these tongs for is feeding, so I do sanitize them after they come in and out of every enclosure, but that is one of the risks you run. Spot has more than likely associated these tongs with feedings to some extent, so sometimes he takes an interest in them when they enter the enclosure because sometimes they're presenting him with food, but you'll notice he is not just stressed out by them like a lot of snakes are, because he has not been grabbed by tongs in years. This is not something he perceives as a threat, where you can imagine if a snake was being handled with tongs every couple days, was being pulled out of the enclosure every few days, grabbed tightly, and being put in that fight or flight situation, you could understand how just seeing the tongs could start to escalate a situation. Ain't that right? I thought about it for a minute. Do I want to see how Spot responds to the tongs, or do I want to just do the hooks that we know and love? I just talked about how much I hate tongs, but it's not like you use them once, you're gonna hurt the snake sort of thing. Let's just see how he responds to this. So you can see one of the struggles is you kind of have to be able to scoop under them. Yeah. And grabbed him. All right. You gotta say. Oop. Oh, shoot. You can see I'm nervous to use tongs. And part of what you might have noticed there was that judgment of, am I grabbing tight enough to hold onto him, but not tight enough to cause pain or hurt him in any way? I'm going to try using the tongs one last time. And if I can't easily find that balance, then I'm just not going to do it. And just like I've got years of experience using the hook, I have years of experience using the tongs, making that judgment call. And if I have trouble telling how much pressure is enough, then you can imagine what somebody who doesn't get a lot of practice might have trouble with it. But here we go. You can see if I pull him out, he's not reacting too terribly or anything. I can bring him down to the floor. And that is why tongs are acceptable. But I don't want to have to pinch him like that every single time I interact with him. But besides me not wanting to do it, more importantly, it's just not necessary to stress your animal out like that. So what I'm going to do now is switch to using the hook, which allows me just to calmly lift under him, make a slide whistle effect, and plop him right into the bucket. That was almost entirely under his volition. The hook steered him in the direction I wanted him to go, and ultimately he barely rattled at the hook, and I never had to worry that I was squeezing him too tight. So now that we got Spot inside of the bucket, safely contained, let's check out what else is going on in the enclosure. This is where pulling the snake out with a hook or tongs would be necessary. You saw I was able to pull out some of that poop, but it crumbled. We got some urate here that has to come out. So I'll get all those loose pieces of snake poop now that I can safely reach in here. All right, so got, I think, all that poop out of there. And now I'm gonna pull this back because there might be some shed waiting back there. Spot was looking like he was getting ready to, oh, well, not a shed, but he did poop, so I'm glad I checked. Another reason you can't just rely on using the tongs to spot clean an enclosure. Sometimes you gotta get the snake out to pull some of the tank decor out of the way to fully see the extent of the mess you need to clean. So I got that poop out from behind the gold pan. The skull is back to where it is supposed to be, and I changed out Spot's water, so now I can get him back home. And I think I'm going to try doing it with the tongs first, and then I'll switch to the hook if he gives me any resistance, just to show you why I prefer the hooks so much. Alright, let's see how Spot is doing. He's been in here for about 5 minutes. Didn't take too long to get his area cleaned up. You can see he's startled. He was trying to tunnel down there, his nose going to the corner of the bucket. I just like bringing that up because it doesn't mean he's necessarily super stressed right now or anything I'm doing is bad, but it just drives home the point that rattlesnakes are not the aggressive animals people think they are. They're defensive and they're nervous, rightfully so. They're small animals, and a lot of people do have the instinct to just want to kill them when they see them, but they really are incredible animals, and I'm going to reach in there. I feel bad that he's already rattling, but this is for educational purposes. Again, only the second time I've used tongs on this snake in as long as I can remember. I'm not sure if I've ever used tongs on this snake. And got him. Whoop, I've grabbed him almost right by his namesake Spot. I don't like the grip though, and you can see how I'm starting to turn his body sideways. I could have pinched tighter and I would have had a grip on him, but he would have been really freaked out because I would have been holding him sideways in midair. So I'm gonna try that one more time. That's another issue with buckets. You can't slide under them with tongs very easily. I'm gonna try to let go and re-grab more appropriately. Oh, a little bit. You can see he's actually coming towards me, which is more than I normally get problem-wise from him. Whoop, don't go under my computer, boy. And whoop, coming towards me again. I'm just trying to slow him down here. And now you can see I'm starting to use the tongs as a hook out of habit just because this is the way to go. Watch. I can lift him with the hook. It slows him down. Now he's fully off the ground, but nothing bad happened to him. He's no longer coming at me. Maybe because he realized it didn't work, but also because now I don't feel like as much of a threat he might need to respond to. Now, he's not rattling. I'm just redirecting him. He doesn't like the hook. It's bothering him. It's getting in his way. But it's not a threat, and he is willing to use it to go where he already wants to go. And that is why any snake handler who knows what he's doing is going to use hooks more than tongs. Now you might be thinking, Joe, that's great, but what happens if the snake doesn't want to just sit on the hook for you, isn't used to it like Spot is, and you have to tail it? Isn't that more risky? Yes, absolutely. It is more risky to use just a hook, and it is definitely more risky to tail a snake. But with enough experience, once you know what you're doing, I still believe the hook is the safest route for both the handler and the snake. And I'll try to show you what I mean by that with Bojangles, my albino rattlesnake behind me. But before I pop open his enclosure, let's just see where Jupiter is. See if she's on her way to Jupiter, maybe. Nope, still in her tree hide. I'm not sure if she's realized she can make it up in there yet. I'll keep you posted. I want her to find it on her own. Alright, so I had to move cameras around and get things situated. I've got you guys over there so you can see Bojangles coming out of the enclosure, but I also have my camera here recording. That's going in the chest mount. Am I? I guess I could have recorded and then, yep, I'm recording. Look at me, a YouTuber who almost knows what he's doing. Get the lock off there. Open that. Got my freshly sanitized tongs. Sometimes tongs are all right for opening the enclosure doors, but I kind of like hooks better for that too. Now I can honestly say I don't think I've ever used tongs on poor little Bojangles here. So he's probably expecting food. He's very used to being fed out of these. He is, at least not since being a baby, ever been picked up by anything that looked like this. Here we go. I'm gonna try to get it. I've got him, and he's handling this better than I anticipated, actually. Part of that could be tongs are better for smaller snakes. So I will say, if your snake is smaller and you are still learning how to use tongs, I definitely don't recommend just jumping into venomous snakes or anything. But see if I can get him to sit here. I just can't break the habit. I go back to using the tongs like a hook because it's how I prefer to manipulate them. But I guess I really do need to, oh, don't fall that way. But I guess I do actually need to use these like tongs if I'm going to show you why I prefer the hook to the tongs. Looks like he might be staying put. Wheel him a little bit more in frame so we can all see him. So Bojangles here has reminded me of one of the strong points of tongs, and that is they do work better for smaller snakes. And it just makes sense if you think about it with the weight that the tongs have to carry and how that weight of the snake is being distributed on the thinness of the tongs. If it's a smaller, lighter snake, that's not going to necessarily hurt them as much. You're not going to have to squeeze as hard because they don't have as much muscle to fight the strength of the tongs. So walking back my first statements just a little bit, there is a time and place where tongs are acceptable. I'm not going to say preferred for smaller snakes, but it doesn't come with nearly as much of the drawbacks, with the caveat that if you're not very experienced with using tongs and knowing what force on the grabby end translates to on the snake end, let's make sure he wasn't moving. Oh, he's moving, don't go anywhere. If you're not used to what sort of force these can apply, then you can still end up injuring a small snake. You can especially end up injuring a small snake, but you don't have to worry about the snake's size and the snake's strength causing them to injure themselves on the tongs as much as I had to be worried with Spot a few moments ago. But as you can see here, Bojangles is really just chilling out. Again, I kind of out of habit ended up using the tongs a little bit like a hook, but now he is on my hook and I either need to get him into the bucket with the tongs or the hook here. So it is decision time, and I'm going to try to address what I brought up earlier, and that is the issue of, with tongs, I can grab him, and if he tries going away, I can just pinch a little bit tighter. You can see he's still sliding, but I'm pretty easily able to make sure that I am not grabbing him too tightly and causing him any sort of pain. But you can see I'm going to not be able to pull him off of that, which means I have to grab him further back now, which means he's moving forward. These are big tongs for a small area, and it's just not an ideal situation. But you can see I was able to eventually get him in the bucket. Oh, don't come out that way. I'll plop him in the bottom of the bucket, and I will leave him in here for a few minutes while I do some tidying in his enclosure, and then I'm going to, pull him out with just the hook and attempt to tail him, so I can show you why I think hooks are still the preferable method, even for smaller venomous snakes that do better with tongs. Alright, might not be a whole lot to pick up in here. Sometimes he poops back here. That's looking nice and clean. Pull that leaf back out for him. Let's see, sometimes there's poop under there. It really looks like there might be a little, I rubbed his butt, so get that out of there. Gross. But other than that, his habitat's looking pretty good. I'll just clean up his glass is even looking good. So I think I'm gonna go ahead and just moisten things down a little bit for him, and then I will attempt to get Bojangles back into his habitat using only the hook. All right, habitat all cleared out. Now I will go ahead and get Bojangles back into his home. We'll see how he enjoyed, I guess not so much of a bath, but I did leave some fresh water in the bottom of this for him to drink. Let's see how he responds to me bringing the lid off of it. How you doing? Looks like he is ready to come out. He's already pointing that way. I'm gonna go ahead and put my camera in the phone mount, and time for the hook to shine. So as you saw earlier, when I would lift him up with the tongs, he would kind of go sailing off the end, and unless I was able to judge the right degree to pinch him with the tong, he would just keep sliding. With the hooks, I can let him start coming out of the bucket. As you saw, that's where he wanted to go anyway, and then use the hook to support his body a little bit. Now it's actually aiding him in where he already wants to go. I'm able to use the bucket here as a shield for my hand, and he is not even rattling. I'm gonna take a seat here, and that is why hooks, in my opinion, are so much better than tongs. Check that out. You could not do that with the tong without freaking him out, and me having to be a lot quicker with the tongs because of his stress, to being really a kind of fun and chill interaction. Again, I'm not telling anybody. Oh, I'm getting a call. This camera stopped recording because I was getting a phone call from Miss Hippie, but that's alright, because I'd rather it happen while I'm using the hook, and Bojangles is easy to persuade, than when I'm using the tongs and he isn't easy to persuade. So, because I want to see what that call was about, I'm not going to push Bojangles' patience anymore here, but just really want to drive home to you the point that I've got my hook here. This isn't free handling, but you can see how much lower stress this is for a snake. And now, instead of having to worry about judging the amount to pinch him with the tongs, I can just feel it with my hand. If he starts trying to slide off the hook, I can grab him. He isn't moving forward anymore. He's pulling against me. He's starting to not like it, but he's supported. I'm all the way back here and he feels safe. So I'm going to go ahead, give him a close-up, and now bring him back into his enclosure. Thank you for being such a model specimen today, Bojangles. And the other nice thing about this is it gives me an opportunity to palpate him and feel he's got some poop in there. It feels like a hard urate. Not an issue. But if you never put your hands on your snakes, you're not going to feel that sort of thing when it does become an issue, when it becomes a hard rock and is fully impacting and obstructing your snake's ability to be able to defecate. So on top of it being lower stress for your animals, that is another benefit of using the tailing and hook method that I forgot to mention. Not only is it lower stress for the snake and just happier and lower stress for all parties involved, but it also gives you as a keeper a chance to put your hand on that back end of the snake where you will feel an impaction if they're having issues with that sort of thing, where if you're using a tong, you are never going to know until that impaction gets so big that you can just see it, or God forbid feel it through the tongs and end up probably causing some internal tearing by the time you feel that inside the snake through tongs. Today I was able to feel there is some urate in him. Now I know to keep an eye that he poops in the next few days, and keep an eye on what that feels like the next time I tail him, which is just part of his care and maintenance that would go totally missed and just unaccounted for if I was using only tongs to work with him, which is another reason tongs are great for relocating a wild animal once, but are kind of really bad if that is the only way you are interacting with your collection. And there you have it. Those are my thoughts on the pros and cons of hooks and tongs, and what I think they're good at and what I think they're not so good at. The only thing that while I was working with the animals I really didn't get into was I went into all the reasons I don't like tongs, and I didn't really talk too much about the negatives of hooks, and that's kind of because the negatives of hooks I feel like are kind of obvious. It doesn't allow you to pinch the snake, so then you're just kind of sacrificing that control of the animal. But hopefully the rest of this video has shown you that even if you don't have the physical control of being able to grab it, there are better ways to control a venomous snake than just grabbing it if you know what you're doing. But as always, I do want to know what you thought of today's video. Was there any pros or cons of hooks or tongs that I forgot to mention in this video? Please let me know down in the comments. I'm very interested in hearing it. And like I said earlier, today's video is just for entertainment purposes. Don't go out and try to handle a venomous snake. Don't go out and try to handle a venomous snake the way I said to do it. Like I said, this is just what has worked for me. When it comes to my venomous snake handling, like I said, I have years of experience, but not all that much training. I had very minimal training in how to use tongs for venomous snakes, but I had to learn everything that I know about how to use hooks pretty much on my own. So take that into account with the information you learned from today's video. Yes, this has worked for me, but your results may vary. And again, I'm not telling anybody to keep venomous snakes. I have these snakes because they cannot go back out into the wild. Please don't keep venomous snakes because you saw some idiot on the internet doing it. And on that note, I would like to thank the patrons that keep this idiot posting. Thank you so much for all of your support over on Patreon. It really helps me continue to get these videos out as frequently as I do. I know this video is a little late. It was January's patron chosen topic, but I just barely got December's video out, so I'm getting caught up. And the patron poll for what you would like to see for February's video is on Patreon now. If you'd like to go vote, if you haven't voted already and you are a patron, go vote. Let me know what you'd like to see at the end of the month. And if you aren't a patron but you love this channel and like what I do and want to help me make more videos more frequently and have some say even over what videos get made, then under this video there will be a link to my Patreon where you can go sign up for as little as $3. That $3 will get you the ability to vote on one video topic per month. It will get your screen name into the end credits of every full video, and if you support at the highest tier level, you'll get your name in the end credits as well as a verbal shout out in every full video on this channel while you are a patron. So those are the patron perks. Shameless plug over, and back to thanking the patrons who make this channel possible. Thank you so much to all of my patrons, starting with my head herpers, Allie Ward, Amanda Lynn, Deborah Torgerson, Jane Cabin Girl, JCH, Lindsay Justice, Loki and Thor, Sierra Sicard, and Tiffany H. Thank you so much to all of my head herpers at the highest tier level. Your support makes it so much easier for me to keep these videos coming, and it really means the world to me. And thank you to all the patrons of all the other tier levels who help keep these videos coming. You guys are the best. And with that, I hope you all enjoyed the video. I hope you learned something from it. I really hope nobody yoinks you out of your bed with a pair of tongs this week. But most of all, I hope that you just keep herping. My little sister made all these for me. The video's over now, but look, that's Spot, we got Bojangles, and we got little Lucy. Spot's my favorite. Don't tell the others. Alright, bye!